Sir, you need to move. This seat is reserved for our premium passengers. Flight attendant Jessica Sterling stood in the narrow aisle, her crisp uniform pressed and name tag gleaming. Her manicured finger pointed toward the back of the aircraft like a weapon. The man in seat 2A didn't budge. Darius Wellington adjusted his plain baseball cap and looked up from his phone. Worn jeans, faded sneakers, a backpack stuffed under the seat in front of him. He looked like any other passenger trying to upgrade himself. "Ma'am, I believe I'm in the correct seat," he said quietly. Jessica's voice carried through the cabin.
"Some people think they can just sit anywhere they want. This is first class, sir. Your ticket is for the back."
Passengers turned to stare. A few pulled out phones. The familiar buzz of judgment filled the air like static electricity. Darius remained seated, fingers drumming once against his armrest. His wedding ring caught the overhead light. White gold, expensive. But Jessica had already made her decision. Have you ever been judged by your appearance in a place where you absolutely belonged? The digital clock above the galley read 2:15 p.m., 15 minutes until scheduled departure from Miami International. Jessica Sterling had worked this route for 8 years. She knew troublemakers when she saw them. "Sir, I need to see your boarding pass," she said, arms crossed tight across her chest. Her voice carried that tone flight attendants perfected, polite enough for witnesses, sharp enough to cut. Darius reached into his back pocket, movements deliberate and calm. The boarding pass emerged between two fingers. Jessica barely glanced at it. "This doesn't look right," she announced. "Brad, can you come here?" Co-pilot Brad Mitchell appeared from the cockpit, all 6'2" of him filling the narrow space. His uniform still had that crisp new promotion look. 26 years old and eager to prove himself worthy of the silver stripes. "What's the situation?" Brad asked, sizing up Darius with practiced authority. "Unauthorized passenger in first class," Jessica said, "claims he belongs here." Brad's eyes swept over Darius's casual clothes, lingering on the scuffed sneakers. "Sir, we have protocols about passenger seating assignments. Can you show me your receipt for this upgrade?" 3 rows back, Maya Chen had already started recording. Her TikTok account had modest followers, but something about this interaction felt wrong. The live stream notification popped up. "Flight drama happening right now." 47 viewers tuned in immediately. "Guys, this is wild," Maya whispered to her phone. "They're basically accusing this man of stealing a seat based on how he looks." Darius pulled out his phone, checking a notification. The screen briefly showed a calendar reminder. Board meeting, Wellington Holdings, 4:30 p.m. Jessica missed it completely, too focused on making her point. "I understand your concern," Darius said, his voice steady as granite. "Perhaps you could verify my seat assignment through your system." Jessica's laugh had an edge. "Sir, I can tell by looking that you didn't pay for first class. This seat costs more than some people make in a month." The words hung in the air like smoke. Passengers shifted uncomfortably. Maya's viewer count jumped to 89. Brad stepped closer, his presence meant to intimidate. "We're trying to resolve this quietly, sir. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." From his leather portfolio, Darius withdrew a Platinum American Express Centurion card. The black metal caught the cabin light. He set it gently on his armrest, saying nothing. Jessica glanced at it, then back at his face. "Anyone can get a fake credit card these days. What I need is proof you purchased this specific seat." Darius's phone buzzed again. This time the caller ID was visible. "Wellington Holdings, Legal Department." He declined the call with one thumb. "Ma'am, I believe everything you need to verify my seating is in your computer system," he said. "What I need," Jessica shot back, "is for you to stop playing games and move to your assigned seat in economy." The announcement crackled overhead. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a brief delay due to a passenger seating issue. We'll be departing approximately 10 minutes behind schedule." Maya's live stream exploded with comments. "This is straight-up discrimination. Why won't they just check their computer? That man is dressed down, but look at that watch. Someone screen record this." The delay announcement repeated. 10 minutes became 15. Jessica's jaw tightened with each passing minute. This was supposed to be a simple flight to LaGuardia. Instead, she had a passenger who refused to follow basic instructions. "Sir," Brad said, his voice carrying new authority, "if you don't move voluntarily, we'll need to involve airport security." Darius glanced at his watch, a Patek Philippe Nautilus, though neither crew member recognized the $150,000 timepiece. He simply nodded once and settled deeper into his seat. "Do what you feel is necessary," he said. The cabin energy shifted. Other passengers were choosing sides. An elderly white woman in 1C muttered about people knowing their place. A young black businessman in 3A shook his head in disgust. Maya's viewer count hit 156. Jessica pulled out her phone, typing rapidly. "Security to gate B12. Disruptive passenger refusing to comply with crew instructions." Darius reached into his portfolio again, withdrawing a thin manila folder. He opened it casually, scanning documents that looked official. Legal letterhead was visible from certain angles, but no one could read the details. "Interesting flight this is turning out to be," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. Brad leaned down, trying to assert dominance through proximity. "Sir, this attitude isn't helping your situation." "I'm simply observing," Darius replied. "This is quite educational." The 20-minute delay announcement echoed through the cabin. Passengers began checking their own connections, frustration building. Jessica felt the pressure mounting. Her supervisor would want explanations, but she'd made her call. Some battles you don't back down from. Maya's phone was getting hot from streaming. Her followers were sharing the video across platforms. #flight discrimination started gaining traction. The man in seat 2A sat quietly, occasionally making notes in his folder. He seemed almost amused. Captain Robert Hayes emerged from the cockpit like a storm cloud. 34 years of flying, silver hair perfectly groomed, 4 stripes declaring his absolute authority. He'd heard enough radio chatter to know this delay was becoming a problem. "What's the situation back here?" His voice carried the weight of command that made passengers automatically straighten. Jessica's relief was palpable. "Captain, we have a passenger refusing to move from first class. He won't show proper documentation." Brad nodded vigorously. "He's been combative since boarding, sir, making accusations about our crew." Captain Hayes studied Darius with professional assessment. The casual clothes, the calm demeanor, the expensive accessories that didn't quite fit. Something felt off, but not in the way his crew was suggesting. "Sir, I'm Captain Hayes. May I see your boarding pass and identification?" Darius handed over both documents without hesitation. Hayes examined them carefully, unlike Jessica's dismissive glance. His eyebrows raised slightly at the ID, but he said nothing. "Your documents appear to be in order," Hayes said slowly. "Captain," Jessica interrupted, "anyone can fake—" "Thank you, Jessica." His tone shut her down immediately. Hayes handed the documents back to Darius. "However, sir, if there's been some confusion about your seating, perhaps we could resolve this amicably?" Maya's live stream had exploded. The viewer count hit 312, comments flooding faster than she could read them. "Captain just sided with the crew! This is insane! Someone call the news! Why won't they just check their computer system?" She whispered urgently to her followers, "Guys, the captain is here now. This is getting serious." An older passenger in 4B had started his own recording, uploading to Instagram with #Seatgate. The hashtag was gaining momentum across multiple platforms. 25-minute delay, came the overhead announcement. "We apologize for the continued inconvenience." Passenger frustration was reaching a boiling point. Business travelers checked their watches. Families with connecting flights began calculating missed opportunities. "This is ridiculous," someone called out from economy. "Just let the man sit where his ticket says." "He doesn't belong up here," another voice responded. "Rules are rules." The cabin was dividing into camps. Darius remained in the eye of the storm, unnaturally calm. His phone buzzed. A text message from Sarah Wellington, assistant. "Sir, Legal team standing by. NYC office has been notified of delay. He typed back quickly. Proceeding as planned. Document everything. Jessica caught fragments of the exchange. Sir, are you coordinating some kind of disruption? I'm simply managing my schedule, Darius replied evenly. Security arrived at the aircraft door. 2 uniformed officers with Miami-Dade patches. Their heavy footsteps echoed through the cabin as passengers craned necks to see. We received a call about a disruptive passenger. Officer Martinez led the way, his partner close behind. Jessica pointed dramatically. That man has been refusing crew instructions for 30 minutes. He won't move to his proper seat. Officer Rodriguez approached Darius. Sir, can you explain your side of this situation? I'm seated according to my boarding pass, Darius said simply. I've provided all requested documentation. The crew seems unable to verify seating through their computer system. Rodriguez examined the boarding pass. His expression shifted slightly, the same reaction Captain Hayes had shown. Ma'am, he addressed Jessica, have you checked your passenger manifest? I don't need to check anything, Jessica snapped. I can see. Have you checked the computer system? Rodriguez pressed. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Jessica's face flushed. She'd been so certain, so focused on what seemed obvious, that she'd never actually verified the seat assignment electronically. Brad stepped forward. Officers, this passenger has been argumentative and uncooperative from the beginning. In what way? Officer Martinez asked. He refused to move when instructed. After providing valid documentation? The questioning was making the crew uncomfortable. Maya's live stream captured every exchange, her follower count now approaching 500. Comments poured in. Security isn't buying their story. Why haven't they checked the computer? This is about to get interesting. Darius pulled out his phone and made a brief call. This is Wellington. Yes, it's time. 30 minutes should be sufficient documentation. He hung up after exactly 15 seconds. The overhead announcement crackled again. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now looking at a 35-minute delay. We sincerely apologize and appreciate your patience. Frustrated passengers began standing, demanding answers. The cabin energy was shifting from uncomfortable to volatile. This is insane, someone shouted from the back. Just figure out who belongs where. Captain Hayes felt control slipping away. His airline's reputation was being damaged in real time across social media. Every minute of delay cost money and credibility. Jessica, check the passenger manifest. Now. Her face went white. After 30 minutes of certainty, she was being ordered to do what she should have done immediately. She moved toward the computer terminal, fingers hesitating over the keyboard. Behind her, Darius watched with the patience of someone who knew exactly how this would end. Maya whispered to her phone. She's finally going to check the computer, guys. This is the moment of truth. The cabin fell silent except for the hum of electronics. 742 viewers held their breath, watching a flight attendant type a passenger's name into a computer system. What appeared on that screen would change everything. Jessica's fingers trembled slightly as she accessed the passenger manifest. The computer screen glowed blue in the dim galley light. She typed, Wellington, Darius. The system loaded for 3 eternal seconds. Then her face went completely white. Ma'am? Officer Martinez stepped closer. What does it show? Jessica stared at the screen, reading and rereading the information. Her mouth opened, then closed without sound. Jessica? Captain Hayes moved behind her to see the display. His reaction was immediate and unmistakable. The color drained from his face as he processed what he was seeing. Seat assignment, 2A, first-class passenger type, charter owner, special services, VIP executive notes, company principal, Wellington Holdings. Oh my God, Jessica whispered. Maya's live stream captured the moment perfectly. The flight attendant's complete breakdown, the captain's stunned expression, the sudden shift in energy that rippled through the cabin. Something just happened, guys, Maya whispered urgently. The crew looks like they've seen a ghost. Darius stood slowly, his movements deliberate and calm. He reached into his leather portfolio and withdrew a single document, official letterhead visible from several seats away. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the now silent cabin, "I apologize for the delay. My name is Darius Wellington, CEO of Wellington Holdings." The silence was deafening. "Wellington Holdings," he continued, "acquired Skylight Aviation 18 months ago for $847 million. This aircraft is company property." Brad's knees nearly buckled. The co-pilot's face went from confident authority to absolute terror in the span of 5 seconds. Jessica remained frozen at the computer terminal, staring at a screen that confirmed her worst nightmare. Maya's viewer count exploded past 1,200. Comments flooded in faster than the app could display them. "No way! He owns the airline? Jessica is fired." This is insane. Passengers began pulling out phones to Google Wellington Holdings. Search results confirmed everything. Darius Wellington, 48, CEO and founder of a private equity firm specializing in transportation and logistics. Net worth, $2.3 billion. Officer Rodriguez looked between Darius and the crew. "Sir, are you saying this is your aircraft?" "Skylight Aviation is a wholly owned subsidiary of Wellington Holdings," Darius confirmed. He pulled out his phone and made another call. "Sarah, connect me to legal, please." The call connected on speaker. A professional woman's voice filled the cabin. "Mr. Wellington, this is Patricia Chen, General Counsel. We've been monitoring the situation through social media reports." "Patricia, I need you to confirm for the officers present that I am aboard company aircraft N847WH on a routine quality assessment." "Confirmed, sir. You are conducting an unannounced service evaluation as per corporate policy established in January 2023. The pieces clicked into place for Captain Hayes. The casual clothes, the calm demeanor, the mysterious documents. This wasn't a passenger trying to sneak into first class. This was an undercover boss evaluation. "Mr. Wellington," Hayes said, his voice barely steady, "I had no idea—" "Captain Hayes," Darius interrupted gently, "you had no way of knowing. This assessment was designed to evaluate how our crew handles challenging situations." He gestured toward Jessica, who still hadn't moved from the computer terminal. "However, the evaluation has revealed some concerning patterns." Darius pulled out a tablet, swiping through screens of data. "Skylight has received 23 discrimination complaints in the past 6 months. Customer satisfaction scores have dropped 15% in the same period." He showed the screen to Officer Martinez. "This flight was specifically chosen because of recent bias-related incidents reported on this route." Maya's live stream had reached 2,100 viewers. The hashtag #SeatGate was trending on 3 platforms. Major news outlets were picking up the story. "The purpose of today's assessment," Darius continued, "was to determine whether these complaints reflected isolated incidents or systemic issues requiring immediate intervention." Jessica finally found her voice. "Sir, we didn't know. If we had known who you were, Ms. Sterling," Darius said quietly. "That's precisely the problem." The statement hit like a physical blow. In the profound silence that followed, every person in that cabin understood the deeper implications. "Your treatment of passengers shouldn't depend on their perceived wealth or status," Darius continued. "It should be consistently professional regardless of appearance." He turned to address the entire cabin. "I chose to dress casually today, specifically to test whether Skylight staff would provide equal service to all passengers." Captain Hayes stepped forward. "Mr. Wellington, on behalf of the crew, I apologize for—" "Captain," Darius held up a hand, "your response when you examined my documents was actually quite professional. You verified information rather than making assumptions." Hayes looked relieved for exactly 2 seconds. "However, your initial support of crew actions without investigation raises questions about leadership protocols." The tablet in Darius's hands contained months of data, employee records, customer complaints, industry standards, legal precedents. This wasn't an angry passenger making threats.
This was a CEO with documentation, resources, and the authority to implement immediate changes. Brad finally spoke, his voice cracking. "Sir, what happens now?" Darius looked around the cabin, at the security officers, the recording passengers, the crew members who had spent 30 minutes trying to remove him from his own aircraft. "Now," he said, "we have a conversation about the future of Skyalite aviation." Maya whispered to her followers, "Guys, I think we just witnessed the most epic boss reveal in history. This is going to change everything." The aircraft hummed with electronic silence. Outside, Miami International continued its normal operations. Inside, a $2.3 billion company owner was about to have a very expensive conversation with employees who had just failed the most important test of their careers. Darius glanced at his Patek Philippe. 3:47 p.m. The board meeting in New York could wait. This was more important. The aircraft cabin transformed into an impromptu boardroom. Darius moved to the front, his casual attire now irrelevant. Authority radiated from him like heat from asphalt. "Officers, thank you for your professionalism," he said to Martinez and Rodriguez. "Your services are no longer needed. This is now an internal corporate matter." Both officers nodded and exited quietly, understanding they'd witnessed something beyond their jurisdiction. Maya kept streaming, her viewer count approaching 3,000. Comments flooded in from aviation industry professionals, civil rights advocates, and business reporters who'd caught wind of the story. Darius opened his tablet fully, revealing months of meticulously gathered data. Let's review Skyalite's performance metrics from the past quarter. Captain Hayes, Jessica, and Brad stood before him like students called to the principal's office. The power dynamic had completely reversed. Customer satisfaction scores, Darius began, reading from official company reports. Q1 2025, 3.2 out of 5 stars. Industry average, 4.1 stars. We're underperforming by 22%. Jessica's hands shook visibly. Her annual salary of $67,000 suddenly felt very precarious. Discrimination complaints filed with corporate headquarters, Darius continued. January through March, 23 incidents. Same period last year, 7 incidents. That's a 228% increase. He swiped to another screen. Ms. Sterling, your employee file shows 6 passenger complaints in the past 4 months, all involving allegations of bias based on passenger appearance or perceived economic status. Jessica's face crumpled. Sir, I was just following protocol. What protocol? Darius's voice remained calm but carried steel underneath. Show me the company policy that authorizes seating decisions based on visual assessment of passenger income. Silence. Mr. Mitchell, Darius turned to Brad. As co-pilot, you're bound by Federal Aviation Regulation 121.58C regarding passenger treatment. Can you cite the section that permits crew members to challenge valid boarding passes without cause? Brad's mouth opened and closed like a fish. His 2-year employment contract suddenly felt like a death sentence. Captain Hayes, Darius continued, you have 12 years of exemplary service with Skyalite. Your record shows consistent professionalism until today's incident. Hayes straightened slightly, hoping for mercy. However, FAR 121.542 requires pilots in command to investigate passenger disputes before involving security. You supported crew actions without examining evidence. Darius pulled up legal documents on his screen. Our corporate liability insurance specifically excludes coverage for discrimination incidents. Today's events, documented across multiple social media platforms, expose Skyalite to potential Federal Department of Transportation fines. He showed them the numbers. Maximum penalty per incident under 14 CFR 250.11, $250,000. Multiple violations can result in operational sanctions. Maya's live stream captured every detail. Aviation lawyers in the comments section confirmed the legal accuracy of Darius's citations. Current Skyalite stock valuation, Darius continued, trades at $127 per share. Discrimination scandals typically result in 8 to 15% stock price drops within 48 hours of public exposure. The math was devastating. Skylight's market cap could lose $89 million by Friday's closing bell. Now, Darius said, closing the legal documents, let's discuss solutions. He opened a video conference app on his tablet. Within seconds, a professional woman appeared on screen. Good afternoon, Mr. Wellington. This is Director of Human Resources, Amanda Foster. Amanda, I'm conducting the crew evaluation we discussed. Please have termination paperwork prepared for employees who fail to meet company standards. Jessica gasped audibly. Brad went pale. Captain Hayes stood straighter, recognizing this as a fight for his career. However, Darius continued, I'm also interested in redemption opportunities for employees willing to undergo comprehensive bias training. Hope flickered in Jessica's eyes. Ms. Sterling, you have two options. Immediate termination for cause, which would include no severance package and a permanent notation in your employment record, or resignation with 6-month severance, conditional on completing 40 hours of sensitivity training through the Miami Civil Rights Institute. Jessica's voice cracked. I choose the training, sir. I want to learn. I want to be better. Mr. Mitchell, your options are identical. Your response? Brad nodded frantically. Training, sir. Absolutely. I had no idea how my actions appeared. Captain Hayes, your situation is more complex. As pilot in command, you bear ultimate responsibility for today's events. However, your eventual intervention shows potential for leadership growth. Hayes waited, barely breathing. 30-day unpaid suspension. Mandatory completion of crew resource management training focused on bias recognition. Return to duty conditional on satisfactory evaluation. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Darius addressed the tablet camera. Amanda, please implement the following company-wide policy changes, effective immediately. He rattled off a comprehensive list. 1. All crew members will complete quarterly bias awareness training. 2. Anonymous passenger feedback systems will be installed on every aircraft. 3. Diversity and inclusion metrics will comprise 25% of all management performance evaluations. 4. Any employee receiving more than 2 bias-related complaints within 6 months will face mandatory counseling and potential termination. Maya's followers watched in amazement as a billionaire CEO implemented real-time corporate reform based on a single discriminatory incident. 5. Skylight will partner with the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People to develop industry-leading anti-discrimination protocols. The live stream comments exploded. This is how you use power responsibly. Real change happening in real time. Other airlines need to take notes. Darius turned to the passengers who had witnessed everything. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay and the uncomfortable situation you've observed. Skylight will issue full fare refunds for today's inconvenience. Spontaneous applause erupted throughout the cabin. More importantly, he continued, your inadvertent participation in this assessment has helped identify critical areas for improvement. Real change requires real accountability. He closed the tablet and looked directly at the 3 crew members. Personal growth begins with acknowledging mistakes. Professional growth requires changing behavior based on that acknowledgement. You each have the opportunity to become better versions of yourselves. Don't waste it. Captain Hayes stepped forward. Mr. Wellington, we won't disappoint you again. Don't make promises to me, Captain. Make commitments to the passengers you serve. The corporate showdown was complete, swift, decisive, and documented by hundreds of witnesses across social media platforms. Justice had been served not through anger or revenge, but through systematic change and personal accountability. Real stories of transformation often begin with moments of uncomfortable truth. The immediate fallout was swift and decisive. Jessica Sterling gathered her personal items from the crew compartment, hands trembling as she signed resignation documents on Amanda Foster's tablet screen. Her 8-year career with Skylight ended not with termination, but with an opportunity for redemption. I'm sorry, she whispered to Darius as she prepared to leave. I thought I was protecting the company. I realize now I was protecting my own assumptions. Ms. Sterling, Darius replied quietly, acknowledgement is the first step toward growth. Use this experience to become someone who sees people rather than stereotypes. Brad Mitchell followed Jessica off the aircraft, his co-pilot dreams temporarily grounded. The young man who'd been so eager to prove his authority now faced months of introspection and education. Captain Hayes remained, his 12-year career hanging by a thread of promised reform. Sir, I want you to know this incident has been a wake-up call. I failed as a leader today. Leadership, Darius observed, means creating environments where bias can't flourish. You have 30 days to learn how to do that. Maya's live stream had reached 4,800 viewers. Major news outlets were reaching out for exclusive interviews. The hashtag Skyalite Reform was trending across multiple platforms, with aviation industry professionals analyzing every aspect of the confrontation. Within 2 hours of landing at LaGuardia, Darius convened an emergency board meeting via video conference. The Wellington Holdings executive team assembled virtually from offices across the country. Today's incident exposed systemic failures in our Skyalite subsidiary, he reported to the board. The response must be proportional to the problem. Chief Financial Officer Robert Kim presented the numbers. Immediate implementation of bias training protocols will cost $2.5 million across our aviation portfolio. However, avoiding Department of Transportation sanctions saves an estimated $15 million in potential fines. More importantly, added Chief Operating Officer Lisa Park, proactive reform positions Wellington Holdings as an industry leader in inclusive business practices. The board approved comprehensive changes unanimously. Skyalite's new policies launched within 72 hours. Every aircraft received QR codes linking to anonymous feedback systems. Passengers could report incidents in real time, with responses guaranteed within 4 hours. The Miami Civil Rights Institute confirmed partnerships for crew training programs. Dr. Angela Martinez, the Institute's director, praised the initiative. This represents genuine commitment to change, not performative corporate gestures. Wellington Holdings' stock price, contrary to initial fears, rose 3% following positive media coverage of the bias prevention initiative. Investors viewed proactive reform as risk mitigation and brand strengthening. Jessica Sterling enrolled in the sensitivity training program immediately. Her first session with Dr. Martinez proved eye-opening. I never understood how my assumptions about wealth and appearance affected real people. That man's dignity wasn't dependent on my approval of his clothes. The training required her to examine implicit biases she'd carried for years. Role-playing exercises forced her to experience discrimination from the receiving end. The process was uncomfortable, necessary, and transformative. Brad Mitchell joined the same program, bringing his own revelations about authority and prejudice. The young co-pilot who'd been so quick to intimidate now questioned every assumption he'd made about passengers based on appearance. By the program's end, both former Skyalite employees received certificates and strong recommendations for future employment in the aviation industry. Their redemption stories became case studies for corporate bias training nationwide. Captain Hayes completed his suspension and training ahead of schedule. His leadership style evolved from authoritarian to collaborative. Crew resource management took on new meaning when filtered through awareness of unconscious bias. 3 months later, Skyalite's customer satisfaction scores improved to 4.3 out of 5 stars, exceeding industry averages for the first time in company history. Discrimination complaints dropped to 0, and employee morale reached record highs. The anonymous feedback system generated over 3,000 responses in its first quarter, with 94% rating their flight experience as excellent or very good. Passengers specifically praised crew members for professional, respectful treatment, regardless of dress or perceived status. Maya Chen's viral live stream became a Harvard Business School case study titled Real-Time Corporate Accountability in the Digital Age. Her documentation provided researchers with unprecedented insight into how social media can drive immediate organizational change. 14 other airlines contacted Wellington Holdings requesting consultation on bias prevention protocols. The Skyalite model became the gold standard for inclusive aviation service. Dr. Martinez expanded her Civil Rights Institute's corporate training programs, citing Wellington Holdings as proof that meaningful change could happen quickly when leadership prioritized human dignity over corporate convenience. This wasn't about political correctness, she explained to industry conferences. This was about economic sense. Discrimination costs companies money, reputation, and talent. Inclusion drives innovation and growth. The transformation reached beyond aviation. Wellington Holdings implemented similar bias recognition training across all portfolio companies, logistics firms, transportation services, and hospitality ventures. The investment of $8.7 million in comprehensive diversity programs yielded measurable improvements in employee retention, customer satisfaction, and operational efficiency. Industry publications featured Wellington Holdings in cover stories about conscious leadership in crisis management. Darius Wellington received invitations to speak at business schools about using corporate power responsibly. But the real victory wasn't in awards or recognition. It was in the thousands of passengers who would never experience what happened on that Miami flight. It was in crew members who learned to see people rather than stereotypes. It was in the systematic changes that prevented future discrimination. These are the touching stories that matter most. Not dramatic confrontations, but quiet transformations that ripple outward, creating more just and equitable spaces for everyone. Real-life stories of change don't always make headlines, but they make life better for countless individuals who follow. 6 months after the incident, Darius Wellington sat in his Manhattan office reviewing quarterly reports. Skyalite Aviation had become Wellington Holdings' most profitable subsidiary, not despite the discrimination reforms, but because of them. The casual clothes experiment had revealed more than bias. It had exposed the hidden costs of prejudice. Customer loyalty increased 47% when passengers felt respected regardless of appearance. Word-of-mouth referrals doubled. Skyalite's reputation for inclusive service attracted premium clients from competitors. Jessica Sterling sent a handwritten letter to the corporate office. She'd been hired by American Airlines, specifically recruited for her sensitivity training certification. Her new role involved developing bias prevention protocols for crew members nationwide. "That day changed my life," she wrote. "I learned that true professionalism means treating every passenger like they own the airline, because you never know when they might." Brad Mitchell completed his commercial pilot certification and joined a regional carrier known for diversity initiatives. His training experience made him a sought-after mentor for young pilots entering the industry. Captain Hayes was promoted to Chief Training Officer at Skyalite, designing programs that taught crew resource management through the lens of unconscious bias recognition. His leadership transformation became a model for aviation management development. Maya Chen parlayed her viral live stream into a career in investigative journalism, focusing on corporate accountability and social justice issues. Her TikTok account grew to 2.3 million followers who appreciated her commitment to documenting real change in real time. The ripple effects extended far beyond aviation. Wellington Holdings' approach to crisis management influenced corporate policies across industries. When discrimination incidents occurred at other companies, boards asked, what would the Wellington response look like? Harvard Business School professor Dr. Sarah Kim published a comprehensive study on the incident. The Wellington Model: How Immediate Accountability Drives Sustainable Change. Her research documented measurable improvements in workplace culture when leadership prioritized dignity over defensiveness. Most companies respond to discrimination with legal teams and damage control, Dr. Kim explained. Wellington Holdings responded with systematic reform and educational investment. The difference in outcomes was dramatic. The financial results spoke volumes. Skyalite's revenue increased 23% year over year following the bias prevention initiatives. Employee turnover dropped 41%. Customer acquisition costs decreased as positive word of mouth replaced expensive advertising campaigns. Wellington Holdings' stock price reached all-time highs, driven partly by investor confidence in management's crisis response capabilities. Environmental, Social, and Governance (ESG) investment funds specifically cited the company's commitment to inclusive practices. Other black stories of transformation emerged across the aviation industry. Passengers began sharing experiences of respectful treatment on Skyalight flights, creating a positive feedback loop that attracted diverse travelers. The anonymous reporting system generated over 12,000 responses in its first year, with 96% positive ratings. More importantly, the 3 negative reports led to immediate coaching and additional training for crew members, preventing escalation. Dr. Martinez's Civil Rights Institute established the Wellington Fellowship Program, training corporate executives in bias recognition and inclusive leadership. The 6-month program had a waiting list of Fortune 500 companies seeking to implement similar reforms. This demonstrates how individual courage can drive institutional change, Dr. Martinez reflected. One person's willingness to confront bias created better experiences for thousands of future passengers. The broader impact reached beyond corporate boardrooms. Aviation schools began incorporating bias awareness into pilot and crew training curricula. The Federal Aviation Administration cited Wellington Holdings' model in updated diversity guidance for commercial carriers. Industry conferences featured panels on the Skyalight Standard, examining how rapid, comprehensive responses to discrimination could strengthen rather than damage corporate reputations. But perhaps the most meaningful outcome was quietly personal. Thousands of passengers now board aircraft knowing they'll be treated with dignity regardless of their appearance, background, or perceived status. Crew members approach their work with enhanced awareness of unconscious bias and its impact on passenger experience. These life stories matter because they prove that change is possible when leaders choose transformation over defensiveness, education over retaliation, and systematic reform over temporary fixes. True power lies not in the ability to punish, but in the wisdom to prevent future harm through thoughtful, sustained action. What discrimination have you witnessed in travel, workplace, or daily life? Your story could spark the change someone else needs to see. Share this video with anyone who believes in the power of quiet courage over loud conflict. Subscribe for more real stories of how ordinary moments can create extraordinary transformation. Together we can build a world where dignity isn't dependent on appearance and respect isn't reserved for the privileged few. Your voice matters. Your experience counts. Your courage to speak up could be the catalyst for someone else's breakthrough moment.